Welcome back. All right, so we have the hardest part done. The areas with the most damage are cut, ready to be polished. That's the roof, the pillars, the whole hood. Now we're going to start taking care of areas around the headlights, headlight bezels, the bumper, area around the front bumper, and then we'll work our way back the fenders, back the doors, through the quarter panels, and finish in the rear of the car. So let's get to it. Today's video will start working around the headlight lids and surrounding areas. We'll use 5000 grit to knock off some of the dead paint there. Not quite as bad as the hood or the roof. As we get to the bumper and below, as you can see here, the corners are worn very thin. Very little product, very little finish here. We're going to be careful. We're just going to polish. We may even just hand polish. I have everything taped, masked off that needs to be, so we're going to moisten the area and start wet sanding. Again, I'm just going to use 5000 grit. We'll remove the oxidation, see what's underneath. That should be good enough. That should do the trick. You don't have to spray a lot of water down. We already have the Trizact sheets and discs soaking. So when you need a little bit more moisture, just push down on the foam and it squeezes out a little bit of water onto the panel. It's a really good system. I love the Trizact discs and the sheets. I put a link down below in yesterday's video. I will do the same again. I really recommend grabbing some old junk panels from a nearby body shop. They're usually more than happy to get rid of those panels, bring them home, set them up on horses, and practice a little bit. So what we have in this area, besides the oxidation, is a little bit of some rock chips, really nothing surprising, a little bit of etching from bug splatter. However, just like the hood and the roof, there may lie some surprises underneath the layer of oxidation. So we'll rinse off the residue. I'm going to break out the polisher. For this, we're just going to use the 5-inch backing plate on a short throw polisher. And it's the 10FX. It's the Torque 10FX. Perfect size, perfect power for this area. We need nothing overwhelming up here. And let's hit this area, shine things up a bit. We'll cut it, we'll make a pass, cut it, and see what it looks like. Looking down at the polisher and the pad that's quickly turning red reminds me of a question I've been getting throughout the series here. Why I don't just skip the wet sanding step and compound the oxidation off. Well, you can. You absolutely can. It's going to take over double the time to do that. You're going to use 60 plus pads, about a quart of compound. And of course I'm exaggerating, but it's really going to take a long time. You are going to have a heck of a time with your pads. You're going to go through a lot of product. And the wet sanding does a great job of shaving that dead paint off. So then you could do a little bit of light polishing. I know some of you guys just love to hang on the polishers all day long, and that would drive me nuts. I can't personally do that. It's not great for the surface. It's not good for clear coat. It's not good for paint. You're rising temperatures way up above exceeding 140, 150 degrees, where the rest of the panel is room temperature. It's a lot of stress on the surface. Learn to wet sand. Grab a panel, practice. So what I showed you there were scratches and some swirls that were underneath a layer of the oxidation. And we're going to try and remove a little bit of them. I'm going to grab 3000 grit and sand a little bit in between the edges and the high points on the panel. I'm going to stay away from the edges. We'll stay right in the middle, and we'll put that down, grab the polisher, polish out the 3000 grit sand marks, and it will be much improved. It won't be perfect, but we wanted to get a majority of those scratches out of there before we move on, and we will be polishing, so that's going to help remove some more. As you can see, all we have left now are a couple stone chips, some gouges here and there, so now we can go and work around the emblem. Get that all cut, and we can move on. Okay, so as we move down below the headlight region, it's just going to be strictly polishing from here because the material gets even thinner. It's just natural, it happens. So we're going to break out the 3-inch polisher. I have a microfiber pad. We're still using the Sonax in this area. When I get down around the plastic and rubber parts down below the bumper, we're going to switch over to the Car Pro Clear Cut. A little bit less aggressive, perfect for that area. And we may even have to hand polish the edges up above the parking light there. So what I did was lower the tape a little bit to cover the edges, the thin edges, and then I continue to polish with the 3-inch polisher. I'll come back later and hit towards the edge there. We'll polish it by hand. And then as we get down below the bumper, there are a lot of tight areas to polish, so we'll put down the 3-inch polisher again, grab the 2-inch polisher. Another good reason to have the cart with everything on it, so you don't have to break the flow of your correction for the day. Alright, so that leaves us with the headlight area and the bumper and surrounding areas cut, ready to be finished. So what we have to do next is jump to the driver's side and passenger side front fenders. And by the way, I also get asked why I don't just break out the ultrafine polish and finish the panels as I'm doing them. Well, it's going to get a good bath. It's going to get a cleaning and a good IP scrub down before I do that process. We're going to break the fender here down into 3 areas. The top part we're going to shave with 3000 grit. The part down below the body line to the blue line here is going to be 5000 grit. We're going to do this area down here by hand. It's textured and we don't want to polish through the high spots. Doing it by hand will just be absolutely fine. So we're going to break out the 3000 grit, slap it on our foam block, which contours to the shape of the fender, and we'll get to work. Also a great idea if you have a helper for single stage. I only broke out 4 pads per panel. I could have broken out more. As I clogged up my pads with the single stage paint, I just threw it to my son who was behind the camera and he cleaned it. He had an airline and he had a brush and some poor boy's pad cleaner and cleaned them off as I handed. We just kept exchanging so I didn't have to break the flow. Either that or just be prepared to break out a nice big stack of pads and then you can clean them at the end of the day. Okay, now we're in the area from the character line down to the blue line. We're going to hit with 5000 grit. That hasn't seen a ton of sunlight, doesn't have quite as much damage, just a little bit to shave off. Again, you could just go right to a compound, but you're going to go through more compound and more pads. Alright, so all the dead paint has been shaved from the fender, and all we have to do then is just polish a little bit to remove the sand marks, and we can move on. This is a shapely fender, has some nice character lines to it. We're going to stick with the 5-inch polisher, the short throw, and I have a cutting pad on that, and we're going to use the Sonax once again. Alright, I went ahead and finished cutting both fenders, driver's side, passenger side. So the entire front clip is cut and ready to be polished and I think is looking decent already. As I mentioned, things would be speeding up. We have to take care of the doors, quarter panels, and there's not really a lot around the rear of the car to take care of, and we're going to speed through that rather quickly. And then we'll get to the polishing stage and the jeweling stage, and we'll coat it. All right, so we have the roof done, the pillars, the entire front clip is finished. Everything else from now on is going to be quick. It's going to be rather easy, very little sanding, just towards the top of each panel where it faced the sunlight a little bit. That's where most of the damage and most of the oxidation is. Not quite as much as we get down the side of the doors, the bottom of the quarter panels, down around the rockers. That's going to be mostly polishing. And as we get to the back of the car, it's also going to be mostly polishing because just like the front, there's a little bit less paint back there to work with, so we're going to be careful once again. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate. Brian from Apex Detail. Catch you in the next video.